Okay, we're here at the Pasadena Book Fair, which is year 2014. It's February. The book fair is sponsored by the Southern California chapter of ABAA, and we're about to interview Andy Nettell of Back of Beyond Books. Hi, Andy. Welcome.
Good morning, Michael.
Good to see you, man. Tell us a little bit about your background, Andy. Your family, where you grew up, schools you attended, siblings, etc.
Well, ironically, I was born right here in Pasadena.
Oh my goodness.
Just a few miles from here at the Huntington Memorial Hospital. Never lived, ironically, in Pasadena. We lived about 30 miles from here in the San Gabriel Valley in a small suburb called Walnut, which was basically just a housing community of 5,000. A very boring tract of homes with no character, no downtown. Being as close as we were to LA, we never went in. We weren't exposed to good food, good culture, and I blame my parents to this day.
What did your parents do?
Dad was an educator and Mom was a housewife. Had two siblings. One brother's still in the house that we grew up in.
Really?
And the other brother's back in Minnesota. He has a couple kids and a wife. Mm-hmm. And I was the black sheep. I'm the liberal of the family, the Democrat.
Yeah.
And family get-togethers, we don't talk politics, we don't talk religion to this day.
It's a good thing.
Keeps things
before somebody slugs somebody.
That's right.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school in Southern California through high school, then went to the community college in Walnut, California that my father worked at, Mount San Antonio College. Got my AA there, and then went west, or east actually, to Flagstaff, Arizona, Northern Arizona University. I'd always wanted to be a Park Service ranger for the National Park Service, and picked up a degree there in forestry, forest management, and that was the extent of my formal schooling.
You ever see Yogi Bear?
Yogi was not in our curriculum.
So when you got out of school, what did you do?
Well, I started working for the Park Service. Preceded one summer working for the Forest Service, but soon realized the cutting down of trees wasn't the direction I wanted to go. I wanted to kind of save the trees, so to speak. And so I started working for the National Park Service at Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. Worked a couple of years there, and then went back east and worked at Independence National Historical Park, right in downtown Philadelphia. The Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, First Bank of the United States, that whole historic district.
Great district.
Spent 3.5 years there, and then came back west, and that's how I got to Moab, where I transferred to Canyonlands National Park and spent 5 years rangering there, and then 5 years at Arches National Park.
So you have a long resume of being a ranger, perhaps much longer than you've been a bookseller.
Longer than I was a bookseller, 15 years with the National Park Service. My wife continually reminds me that if I'd stayed with them, I could have retired this year, and supported her in the fashion she wants to be.
Yeah, well, did you tell her get a job if you want the money?
However, things conspired, and for reasons I'm still not entirely clear, I bought a very small little music store in Moab, Utah. CDs, not instruments. I was producing folk concerts. I was a DJ on the local community radio station, and this 900 square foot music store was set to close. And I couldn't bear that. And so in 1998, I took a part-time leave from the Park Service and tried to get this music store back on its feet, fully intending on hiring a manager and going back to the Park Service. I had no idea what it took to run a 900 square foot retail store. After trying to do both for a year, I realized I couldn't, and I had to make a decision. I then left the Park Service and concentrated on Music of Moab, which was the little music store. Of course, about the year 2000 or so, 1999, digital downloading was the rage. All the kids started doing that. And for once, I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I sold the music store in 2001 and fully intended on taking 6 months off to travel, kind of see the world.
Sure.
And I got a call about 2 weeks after I started my travels from the people who had purchased the music store, said, "Will you please come back and manage us? We don't
know what the hell we're doing."
So I said, well, I'll do it for the right amount of money, and they said fine. But I also told them that was not my intention on staying there, so I stayed there for another 6 months.
Did they get back on their feet, or did they close?
No, it's still open.
Oh, that's great.
It's still open.
That's good.
They've gone mostly into video. But
Well, yeah. When did you decide that the book business was something you had an interest in?
that was part of this 6 month of traveling idea. I had always loved books. I was had a big library, especially a natural history library. I was not a collector, though. I was a consumer of books. But I saw a niche in our little community. There was already a small store called Back of Beyond Books. It had opened about 24 years ago, and I was one of their larger customers. But they were very focused in natural history, in the writing of the West, in environmental literature, maps, and guidebooks. So in the fall of 2001, I cobbled together some money and a few investors, and we opened Arch's Book Company, which was a general interest, full-service store, had a coffee bar. It was a Barnes & Noble Junior.
Yeah, okay.
And we opened directly across the street from Back of Beyond Books. And it was not with any animosity. We tried to fill a niche that Back of Beyond was not filling. We would sell mystery novels, romance. We had the coffee bar, 500 titles of magazines. And I think it worked for a while.
What happened?
Well, Back of Beyond went up for sale. About 4 years after we opened Arch's Book Company, so that'd be 2005, 2006. And I was fortunate to cobble some more money together, and we bought Back of Beyond Books. And so now we have two stores, Arch's Book Company, general interest, Back of Beyond Books, the specialized.
Right across the street from each other.
Right across the street from each other. I jaywalked probably 50 times a day. Fortunately, it's a slow town. So I never was injured in that pursuit.
When you bought Back of Beyond Books, did you envision yourself having a staff, or did you envision it as being a one-man operation?
Oh, no. 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Yeah, no, it's not for one person.
No, at the peak of that model, we had 22 employees. We, in retrospect, stupidly opened up a third store a block south.
Right.
This was a little store that just sold paperbacks, used paperbacks. I bought the remnants of the Book Baron store in Fullerton, California, loaded up 2 semis, drove it out, and a week later we had a third store. So yeah, we had 22 employees. I was doing nothing but managing people, and frankly wasn't enjoying it all that much.
I can imagine.
And the coffee bar turned out to be a totally different business operation than books. Booksellers didn't want to do coffee. Coffee makers, baristas didn't want to do books. And we started seeing literature slip in terms of sales. And so by 2007 and 8, especially 2008, with the decline in the
not a good year
economy, we had to make some changes, and we moved Arch's Book Company directly across the street next door to Back of Beyond, busted a couple holes through the common wall, and tried to do that for a year, but the overhead still wouldn't allow it. So in 2009 or 10, I guess, we ended up closing Arch's Book Company, and we closed the used bookstore a year ago. And so now we're back with what I wanted to do originally, which is Back of Beyond Books.
Yeah, in the first place. So you got to a point, it took you a while, but you got to a point that you wanted to be at.
Pretty much, yeah. I've got 2 full-time employees. My wife does our bookkeeping. I have a warehouse that we do our online operations out of, and a couple part-time people once the longer tourist season begins.
There's a tourist season in Moab?
Yeah, we have Arches National Park, Canyonlands
right, I
National
forgot.
Park right there.
Canyonlands, that's
we
right there.
We see 1 million visitors a year.
It's a good place to have a bookstore, I would think, but who knows?
Yeah, we get probably 70-80% of our business from tourists.
Really?
I couldn't survive
Without
with
the
just the local economy. I require the tourists.
What is your web presence? Do you have a web page? Are you on multiple matching services? How many items do you have up?
We have a homegrown website that's basically just a placeholder. We don't do a lot of sales off of that. We have maybe 200 to 300 books on our own website, just the guidebooks, maps.
Yeah.
As people are planning their trip, maybe they want to pick up some of those. But we list on the multiple channels for our better books, and I probably have 7,000 or 8,000 books listed.
Online?
Online, yeah.
What percentage of your business is online?
Pretty small.
As
I've
compared-
never really seen that growth that I would like to see. Rarely do I sell a high-end book online.
Really?
So, a lot of $10, $20, $30 books, but that takes a lot of time to list those.
Yeah, and it takes time to pack them, and time
Absolutely.
to enter the credit card charge and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Who were some of the people that you considered to be mentors or very helpful to you as a bookseller?
I wish I had that mentor
Really?
figure.
Yeah, where you were.
Being in Moab, there are no other dealers nearby. Salt Lake was the closest
Yeah.
town of any size that had any dealers. But of course, Tony Weller of Weller Bookworks really took me under his wing, and to a larger extent, Ken Sanders. Ironically, Ken was one of the initial investors in Back of Beyond Books, but he never was involved after that initial investment.
I think he's saving his money for his own demise, I guess.
So yeah, both Ken and Tony helped me to the extent that they could, 250 miles away. Certainly I went up to their shops and observed what they were doing, but I never intended to go into Antiquarian. That wasn't.
It just happened?
Well, when I bought Back of Beyond, the previous owners, who were in Wyoming, had one little case of Edward Abbey books. And so when I took over the store and walked into the store that first morning, that case was empty. And I asked the manager, where are the Abbey books? And he said, well, those were really owned by the owners, and they wanted to keep those. And Back of Beyond Books, the store name is right out of the Monkey Wrench Gang.
Yeah.
When the Gang of Four would get too close to the law would get too close to the gang, they would go to the Back of Beyond.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I needed to at least represent some Abbey titles. So I started trying to refill that small case. And the rest of the story, one thing led to another. And pretty soon I'm trying to fill some niches with some friends of Abbey's, the Wendell Berrys and the Wallace Stegners and the Barbara Kingsolvers and so on. And then I realized I need a little bit broader of a scope. And so probably 7 or 8 years ago, I started concentrating more on the antiquarian side of business. But it remained pretty small until I started doing a few shows. And Sam Hessel, by the book, ran into me at one of the San Francisco off fairs, and he said, you really have quality material. You should join this organization called the ABAA. And frankly, I'd heard of it, but didn't know all that much about it. But Sam's a pretty impressionable guy, and he impressed upon me that there was value to this professional organization. I didn't have my 3 years in yet, though. And so I had to wait another 9 months or a year, and I put in the application. And
Who was your sponsor? Do you
Ken
remember?
Sanders.
And your seconder?
Tony Weller and Sam Hessel.
That's great. And so now, how long have you been selling books altogether?
Since 2001.
Since 2001. And you have an open shop.
We have an open shop.
And you said you depend mostly on tourist business because of the area.
For the new trade books,
right?
Not the antiquarian.
The antiquarian books, no.
It's a different business model entirely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had really no person who was standing by your side helping you along when you first started. Tony and Ken were 250 miles away. What was your first book fair? First ABAA book fair?
First ABAA fair was San Francisco, probably 4 years ago.
And that was your first one?
Yes.
And what were your impressions of it after the fact?
Oh, I was scared to death before, during, and after. You know, you're setting up with your... I cleared out every antiquarian book I had from my shop, and I probably took 15 banker boxes to San Francisco.
Wow.
And then I begin to set up, and I look around, and I see who's next to me, and they're, you know, selling these amazing 16th century tomes, and then on the other side there's these botanicals, there's Audubons, there's Shakespeare folios.
There you are,
and
right
I
in the
got my
middle.
little Abbey book there. But we made a couple nice sales. I sold a Mary Austin and inscribed Mary Austin Land a Little Rain.
That's a good one.
And that made me feel really good. And I received a lot of good feedback from other dealers and a few clients. But I'd done a few regional shows before that, the Denver show especially, and Albuquerque, and then we later did Seattle.
The book fair circuit, huh?
Yeah.
You know, we have a book fair circuit up in New England, but everything's so much closer to each other. It makes it easy.
I've got a little Prius, and I can pack 20 banker boxes, 6 bookcases, and we put a lot of miles on that car.
Yeah, you get a good gas mileage on it,
Yes.
too. Did you have any problems transferring onto the computer? Were you a computer person to begin with, or were you a bookseller that had to use a computer?
No, I'm a Luddite forced into the 21st century.
Just like me.
I certainly recognize the value of understanding those tools, and I utilize the basic tools, but I could be doing a lot more.
You know, self-examination never hurt. What do you see as some of the challenges facing our organization as we move into 10 or 15 years down the road?
Well, certainly the internet, you know, you've heard that over and over and over. It brings challenges. It's depreciated so much of that lower and middle end stock.
It's terrible.
It really makes it quite depressing for me in terms of really, really good books that you can't sell. Fortunately, I have that open shop, so if I buy those correctly, the regional books, Colorado River books, I can sell those through the store.
Yeah.
So I really had to focus on what I do list online, trying to set yourself aside with unique books. So that remains the challenge. The economy always is going to be challenging. I don't think I see a huge growth in our clientele base for rare and antiquarian books.
Have you picked up many collectors from your book fair experiences?
That's where I pick up most of them. And I have a small client base. I send out maybe 400 catalogs. I do about 3 catalogs a year.
What's the subject matter of the catalogs?
Mostly Western Americana, although I try to sprinkle in, you know, if I've bought a collection of literature, I just bought some McCarthy books, you know, I'll feature those in the next catalog.
Yeah,
But
why not?
Western Americana is what my love is and what I know best.
Well, that's really really great. We talked a little bit about the computer world. I'm wondering to myself, what would happen if suddenly the internet collapsed and we had to go back to the earlier ways of doing books?
I would be thrilled on one hand that you could actually use your book knowledge.
That's right.
You could go out and do scouting, the things that you used to do.
Yep.
I never was part of that world to me, scouting is so hard to do.
It is.
Even in the junk stores and the antique stores, people think they know what something is worth. And so those nuggets are harder and harder to find.
Yeah.
But that personal interaction with your clients,
You can't beat it, man.
that's where it's at.
I know. The
I
passion.
love putting that book into the right hands and unfolding that map and seeing their eyes light up, or
And then trying to figure out how to fold it back so it goes right, which is another issue altogether.
But for every book, there's a story, and for
Absolutely.
every sale, there's a story with that customer. And to me, that can't be replicated in any way online. That's why we need to keep these fairs going. That's why we need to keep open shops, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And yet, the economics makes it hard.
2 years ago, when I was out here, I went to a number of bookshops in Pasadena, Glendale, Burbank, etc. I went to 5 bookshops Friday morning. Every one of them is out of business.
Yeah.
Every damn 5. I was 0 for 5, and this is just 2 years.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. Like someone before you, Richard Murian, said there used to be hundreds of bookstores in this
Southern
general.
California. All right. Right.
And now, what do we have left?
Well, maybe there's going to be a slight resurgence. I belong to the American Booksellers Association, and they represent independent booksellers for primarily new trade titles. And there's a pretty good optimism within that organization. They actually saw net growth in the last 2 years,
Wow.
which they hadn't seen in
That's
many
amazing.
years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So maybe this whole buy local thing will actually help the remaining open shops that are out there.
Well, I would hope so. It used to be around New England there were hundreds and hundreds of bookstores, and now you can count them, on 2 hands.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but
It's very sad.
it's the way of the world. And we need young people like yourself to come in and fill the void.
I'm glad you called me young.
You were young in
Michael.
comparison to me.
But yeah, there's been so much press this week about the young crop of booksellers, and it's exciting to see that. But it's also exciting to see the older generation, to learn from them and to be embraced by them into the fold.
This is one of the reasons why this project is so important, because 50 years from now, someone is going to be able to access these and see the way we used to do things. Maybe they'll giggle and say, "Ha, those idiots, they do it this way, it's so easy." But looking into the future, who knows? Who knows what's going to be?
But good books remain good books, Michael.
They'll always be good ones. Yes,
As long as
I agree.
there's people who have a love of the history and love of literature, we're going to be okay.
Well, that's a good point to stop for our interview. Thanks very much, Andy. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you again, man.
Thank you.
Take care.